In this video, I am going to discuss the vicious circle of poverty. As you know, this forms an important part of the development economics. In many of the universities, this part is included in the syllabus of development economics. So this becomes very important from the examination point of view as well. Let us see what is meant by this vicious circle of poverty. And here we introduce the definition, or we put forward the definition of Professor Ragnar Narks. If you look at the last bullet points, it can be seen that Narks defines it as a circular constellation of forces tending to act and react upon one another in such a way as to keep a poor country in a state of poverty. It simply means there are certain forces in underdeveloped economies which act and react upon one another in such a way that the underdeveloped economy is kept always in a state of poverty. So that is the definition which and Ragnar Knox has given to this concept of vicious circle of poverty. So according to this principle, in UDCs means underdeveloped economies or underdeveloped countries, there is the existence of low level of income because people do not have means more income. They have only subsistence level of income, and this subsistence level of income naturally prevents people from saving a lot, and therefore investment will also be low in such countries. So these countries are caught in a crisis that it becomes very difficult for these countries to get out of this low level of underdevelopment because of these forces acting and reacting upon one another and making the country trapped in a vicious circle of poverty. So we are going to discuss in detail what are the causes of the vicious circle of poverty, what are the solutions for this. So these things we will discuss. So economists, as often in the case of the many of the issues, economists appear to be differing in their opinions about the vicious circle of poverty. So what causes the vicious circle of poverty, or where is the starting point of vicious circle of poverty? Actually, they have differences of opinion about these things. Professor Nash, for instance, says that vicious circle of poverty is caused by lack of capital formation because underdeveloped economies are characterized by lack of capital. And this lack of capital formation or investment is a main reason for vicious circle of poverty, according to Professor Ragnar Nuts. But some others point out that it is not only this capital formation. The primary reason for vicious cycle of poverty rests on the demand side. That means the small size of the market creates a hurdle for these underdeveloped economies. And because of the small size of the market, these developed countries have always been caught in a vicious circle of poverty. For instance, Kindleberger means actually put forward this opinion that vicious circle of poverty takes place due to the small size of the market. So we have three important reasons for vicious circle of poverty, and hence we have three kinds of vicious circle of poverty. One is the supply side vicious circle, second is demand side vicious circle, and the third is the vicious circle of market imperfections. Because it is also said that the market imperfections that can also lead to a vicious circle of poverty in underdeveloped economies. Let us focus on the first one, that is the supply side of vicious circle. Samuelson says that the backward nations cannot get their heads above water because they cannot rise, or they cannot means they cannot get their heads above water because their production is so low that they can spare nothing for capital formation by which their standard of living could be raised. So their production is very, very low. And since production is low, the income generation will also be low. So since they get only subsistence income, the question is how can they set aside some money for saving? So saving becomes very difficult. And since saving is limited, then naturally investment will also be limited. And this will prevent these countries from raising their standard of living. So supply side vicious circle indicates that in underdeveloped countries, productivity is so low that it is not enough for capital formation. And this is one important supply side reason leading to vicious circle of poverty in underdeveloped economies. In the words of Professor Knox, on the supply side, there is small capacity to save resulting from the low level of national income. And since the level of income is a reflection of low productivity, and that which is in turn is largely due to lack of capital accumulation, it actually results in a low capacity to save, and as a result, this vicious circle comes up and it will be completed. So this flow chart will explain the supply side reason for the vicious circle in a very means clear manner. First, we start with the low level of income. And of course, this low level of income will lead to low level of saving, and that will further lead to low level of investment, low level of production, and low level of income also. So this is how the supply side creates a vicious circle of poverty in an underdeveloped country. Now, this can be put in the form of a figure, and this figure clearly shows this how this vicious circle means happens in underdeveloped economies. We start from low income, leading to low saving. Low saving will further accentuate the problem of low productivity. Low productivity will lead to low investment, and finally we will end up in low income. Again, low income will lead to low saving, and the process goes on, and the vicious circle of poverty never ends. It goes on because of these factors and acting and reacting upon each other. So in these countries, poverty refers to low real income, and real income remains low due to the low level of capital, and capital is low because of low level of saving. And the reason of low level of saving is the low level of income. Thus, it becomes clear from the above analysis that the main reason for low level of income is a low level of saving. Consequently, investment becomes not possible, and a man can save only when his real income exceeds consumption. But in underdeveloped economies, we know that there are two groups of people, rich and poor. But the poor people are generally farmers, and they actually they are engaged in subsistence farming, so they do not produce anything for the market. And we know that unless they produce anything for market, they cannot make a surplus. So they have no saving, because they whatever they produce, and they will be used, means these things will be used for consumption. And since they do not produce anything for the market, it becomes very difficult for them to find out money for savings. The method of cultivation are very old and unskilled. The productivity of labor is low, and disguised unemployment prevails. There is immobility of labor. Labor may not move from the agriculture sector to industrial activities, so immobility is there. All these factors actually lead to low level of income, and whatever income they get, they will use that income for consumption. And in this way, there is a lack of saving, and lack of saving will of course lead to lack of investment and capital formation. Now, looking at the demand side, or demand side vicious circle, we see the similar problems but in a different form. Knox says that on the demand side, there is no inducement to invest, and people are not induced to invest. Why are they not induced to invest? Because they believe that even if they produce, then they cannot find a market for their products because of the limited size of the market in underdeveloped economies. The entrepreneurs fear that even if they produce, they cannot find a market for their products, because the purchasing power of the people is very low because of low income. And since the producers tend not to invest, the productivity will be very low, and low productivity is a result of small amount of capital, and this will ultimately lead to low level of inducement, and finally the economy will be caught in a vicious circle of poverty from the demand side. And this chart explains how this happens. We start from low income, and low income leading to low demand, low investment, low productivity, low income, etc. Now, this kind of a vicious circle working on the demand side can be illustrated with the help of this figure, where means upper part of the figure shows the low income. So we start from there, low income leading to low demand, and that will further lead to low investment, low productivity. Low productivity will again lead to low income, and so on. The above figure also shows that low income leads to low demand, which in turn results in low investment, and low capital, which again leads to low productivity. So, the main reason for poverty in these countries is the low level of demand. Consequently, the size of the market remains low. The small size of the market becomes a hurdle in the path of inducement to invest. Now, we will see the vicious circle of market imperfections, or how the market imperfections may lead to vicious circle of poverty. Mayer and Baldwin have described a third vicious circle based on capital deficiency due to the market imperfections. In underdeveloped economies, resources are underdeveloped and people are economically backward. And existence of market imperfections prevents optimum allocation and utilization of natural resources. And the result is underdevelopment, and this in turn leads to economic backwardness. And we know that if there is market imperfection, then resources cannot be optimally utilized. And if resources are not optimally utilized, it does mean that either the resources remain unutilized or underutilized. So that is again create a low productivity, low employment opportunities, low income, and the economy will be pushed into economic backwardness forever. So that is how the vicious circle takes place from the side of the market imperfections. Now, this figure shows clearly how it happens, and we first means move from the market imperfections, leading to low productivity. Low productivity will end up in low real income, and that will means create two important issues. One is it will generate means low demand, and on one side, and on the other side, it will lead to low savings, and both will end up in low investment, and low investment will lead to low capital formation, and that will further lead to market imperfections, and that market information imperfections will further lead to low productivity, low real income, etc. Now, the vicious circle of poverty is a result of various means vicious circles, which are on the supply side and demand side. And the country is caught in a vicious circle of poverty, which are mutually aggravating, and it becomes very difficult to break such a vicious circle. So, this two kinds of solutions can be found to break this vicious circle. One solution is on the supply side, and one solution is on the demand side. What are the solutions on the supply side? First is you can means the country can increase the saving and increase the investment. And on the demand side, what can be done by a company? It can, or what can be done by a country? Either it can widen the domestic market. And after the domestic market is widened, then it can look forward to the foreign market. So widening the foreign market. So by taking these two important initiatives,